License and registration!
Picture this. It's a quiet Wednesday evening in Portland, September. The air smells like autumn rain about to fall. Families are sitting down to dinner. Kids are finishing homework. The world feels normal. And then, red and blue lights slice through that normalcy like a knife. Officer Marcus Bennett steps out of his patrol car, and his hand, almost like it's trained, goes straight to his belt. 12 years he's worn that badge. 12 years he's walked these streets. But Marcus isn't known for the right reasons. He's the kind of cop other officers avoid in the break room. The kind whose name appears on complaint after complaint, stacked in folders that somehow never go anywhere. Tonight, Marcus Bennett is about to make the biggest mistake of his entire career. He's just pulled over a sleek black Mercedes sedan. Claims it's for a broken taillight. But here's the thing. The taillight isn't broken. Never was. And the man sitting in that driver's seat? That's Captain David Morrison, head of internal affairs for the entire Portland Police Department. But Marcus doesn't know that yet. Before we go any further, I need to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country down in the comments. And please hit that subscribe button because this story is about to take you on a journey you won't forget. Trust me. Marcus walks toward that Mercedes slowly. His flashlight cuts through the darkness even though the sun hasn't fully set yet. There's still light. Plenty of light. But this is a power move. Make them wait. Make them sweat. Make them understand who's in control here. He's done this hundreds of times before. David sits in his car, both hands visible on the steering wheel. 23 years he's been in law enforcement. Started as a patrol officer, worked his way up, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, and finally, captain. 3 months ago, the police commissioner personally chose him to clean up internal affairs after a scandal that made national headlines. The department needed someone with a spotless record, someone with the spine to go after dirty cops. David Morrison was that person. But right now, in this moment, he's not a captain. He's not the head of internal affairs. He's just another black man being pulled over for no reason. Marcus reaches the window and taps it with his flashlight. Another power move. Unnecessary. Designed to intimidate. David presses the button. The window slides down. License and registration, Marcus says. No greeting, no courtesy, just the command. David keeps his movements slow, deliberate. May I ask why you pulled me over, officer? Marcus's jaw tightens. He hates that. Hates when they ask questions. I said license and registration, now. This is the moment. The crossroads. David has a choice to make, and it's not an easy one. He could pull out his badge right now, show his identification, watch this officer's face drain of color, watch him stammer and apologize and retreat. Or he could let this play out. See exactly how far Marcus will take this. Gather evidence for what he already suspects, that this officer has a serious problem that needs addressing. David chooses option 2. I'm reaching for my glove compartment now, David says, narrating his movements. He's taught countless young black men to do this during community outreach programs. My registration is inside. Marcus's hand moves closer to his weapon. Faster. I don't have all day. The registration comes out first. Then David pulls his wallet from his jacket, extracts his driver's license. Both hands go back to the steering wheel, documents held between his fingers where Marcus can see them. Marcus snatches the documents, studies them with his flashlight like they're written in code. The address checks out. Nice neighborhood. About 10 minutes away. License is current. Everything is in perfect order, which seems to annoy Marcus even more. Step out of the vehicle, Marcus orders. For what reason? David asks. His voice is calm, steady. I smell marijuana. Step out of the vehicle. Now. There is no marijuana. David doesn't smoke. Never has. His car smells like the coffee he spilled that morning and the leather cleaner he used over the weekend. But David knows this script. He's seen it too many times in the complaints that cross his desk. He opens the door, steps out. 6 feet tall, well-built, carries himself with the posture of someone used to authority. This seems to put Marcus even more on edge. Turn around, hands on the vehicle. David complies. He feels Marcus's hands pat him down. Roughly, more roughly than necessary, searching for weapons or contraband that don't exist. Neighbors are starting to notice now. An elderly woman stands on her porch across the street. A teenage boy slows his bicycle to watch. The performance has an audience. "What do we have here?" Marcus says, pulling David's phone from his pocket. "That's my phone," David states. "I'll decide what it is," Marcus shoots back. "Looks expensive. Where does someone like you get the money for a car like this and a phone like this?" "Someone like you?" There it is. The words that explain everything about this stop. If you've ever experienced or witnessed something like this, type badge in the comments. Let's see how many of us understand what's really happening here. David takes a slow breath. His phone has a fingerprint lock anyway. Marcus can't access it, but taking someone's property during a traffic stop without probable cause? That's a violation. Strike one for Officer Marcus Bennett's growing list of problems. "I work for my money, officer," David says evenly, "just like anyone else." Marcus walks back to his cruiser with David's license, registration, and phone. He sits inside for nearly 20 minutes. 20 minutes. This is another tactic David recognizes. Make them stand there. Make them wait. Make the humiliation last as long as possible. During those 20 minutes, 3 more neighbors come out to watch. One of them, a young woman, has her phone out. She's recording. Marcus is too focused on running David's information to notice. The records come back clean. Of course they do. Not even a parking ticket. David Morrison has a spotless record, both as a citizen and as a police officer. But his employment information wouldn't show up in the basic search Marcus is running. To Marcus, he's just another civilian who needs to be put in his place. Marcus finally emerges from his cruiser, walks back to David, who's been standing with his hands on his Mercedes for the entire 20 minutes. "I'm going to search your vehicle," Marcus announces. "On what grounds?" David asks. "You've run my information. I have no warrants, no record. The stop was for a taillight that isn't broken. You claim to smell marijuana, but clearly found nothing during your search of my person. What probable cause do you have to search my vehicle?" Marcus's face reddens. He's not used to this. Not used to people who know their rights. Not used to people who can articulate the law back to him. "Don't tell me how to do my job," Marcus snaps. "I have reasonable suspicion, and that's all I need." "Reasonable suspicion of what, specifically?" David presses. This is the moment when Marcus makes his second major mistake of the evening. His first was pulling David over. His second is letting his anger get the better of him. "You want to play lawyer?" Marcus says, moving into David's personal space. "How about I add resisting arrest to the charges?" "What charges?" David asks. "What am I being arrested for?" "Disorderly conduct, failure to comply with a lawful order." David has done nothing disorderly. He's complied with every order, even the unlawful ones. And now Marcus is going to arrest him on false charges because his ego can't handle being questioned. The handcuffs come out. "Turn around," Marcus orders. David has reached his limit. Not because he's afraid of being arrested. He's been in law enforcement long enough to know false arrests can be overturned. But because this officer needs to understand exactly what he's done. "Officer Bennett," David says, reading the name tag for the first time. "Before you put those handcuffs on me, I need to inform you that I am Captain David Morrison, head of internal affairs for this police department." Marcus freezes. For a moment, he just stands there, handcuffs open in his hands, staring at David. "Badge number 047, David continues. "I report directly to the police commissioner. And for the past 25 minutes, you have been conducting an illegal stop, an illegal search, an illegal seizure of property. And now you're attempting an arrest based on false charges." The color drains from Marcus's face. Then it comes rushing back, red and hot. "I don't believe you," he says, but his voice has lost its certainty. "Show me your badge." "My badge is in my wallet," David replies. "Which is in your hand, the same wallet you took my driver's license from. If you had bothered to look, you would have seen it." Marcus looks down at the wallet still clutched in his left hand. With shaking fingers, he opens it. There, next to where the license had been, sits David's police identification and badge. The handcuffs clatter to the pavement. I didn't know," Marcus stammers. "Would it have mattered if I wasn't a police captain?" David asks. "If I was just a regular citizen, would this stop have been acceptable?" Marcus has no answer for that. Or rather, he does, and they both know it's not one he can say out loud. "I'm going to ask you a direct question," David says. How many times have you done this? How many black drivers have you pulled over without cause? How many illegal searches? How many false arrests? Marcus's mouth opens and closes. Sweat appears on his forehead, despite the cool evening air. I want you to think very carefully about your answer, David continues, because I'm going to be reviewing every single report you've filed, every single stop you've made, and every single complaint that's been lodged against you. And something tells me we're going to find a pattern. The neighbors are still watching. The young woman is still recording. This is all going on record, exactly as David intended. Sir, This was a mistake, Marcus tries. You thought what? David cuts him off. You thought my taillight was broken? It's not. You thought you smelled marijuana? You didn't. You thought I was being disorderly? Your own dashcam will show I was completely cooperative. So what did you really think, Officer Bennett? The question hangs in the air like smoke. They both know the answer. Marcus thought he could pull over a black man in a nice car and flex his authority without consequences. He thought he could violate someone's rights because he wore a badge. He thought he was above the law. Do you think officers like this should be fired immediately? Or is there another solution? Drop your thoughts below. Marcus bends down to pick up the handcuffs he dropped. His movements are shaky. What happens now? He asks. Now, David says. You're going to return my phone and my documents. Then you're going to get in your cruiser and drive directly to the station. You're going to go to Internal Affairs and file a complete report of this incident, every detail. And then you're going to wait for me to arrive. And if I don't? The question comes out as barely a whisper. David gestures to the neighbors, to the woman with her phone, to Marcus's own dashcam. Then I'll file the report for you. And it will include failure to comply with a superior officer's direct order. Your choice. Marcus hands over the phone and documents with trembling hands. He walks back to his cruiser like a man heading to his own funeral. The engine starts. The red and blue lights finally go dark. The cruiser pulls away from the curb and disappears down the street. David stands there for a moment, letting his own adrenaline settle. People don't realize how much energy it takes to stay calm during something like this. Every instinct screams to react, to be angry, to raise your voice. But David learned long ago that staying calm is its own form of power. The young woman with the phone approaches him cautiously. Are you okay? She asks. I am, David replies. Thank you for recording that. I've seen that officer around here before, she says. He pulled over my brother last month, gave him a ticket for an expired inspection sticker that wasn't expired. My brother tried to fight it, but nothing happened. Nothing happened then, David corrects gently. But something's going to happen now. Can I get your contact information? You and your brother may be witnesses in an investigation. She nods eagerly and gives him her phone number. David enters it into his phone, along with a note about the incident with her brother. The elderly woman from across the street calls out, "About time someone did something about that man. He's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years." Years. Marcus had been doing this for years, and no one had stopped him. How many complaints had been filed and ignored? How many people had been harassed, illegally searched, falsely arrested? How many lives had been disrupted because one officer thought his badge made him untouchable? David gets back into his Mercedes and sits in silence for a moment. He could have avoided all of this by showing his badge immediately. But then, he would have only saved himself. He wouldn't have seen how far Marcus was willing to go. He wouldn't have gathered evidence of the systematic abuse of power. This is why he took the job as head of internal affairs, not to protect bad cops, but to remove them. Not to cover up problems, but to drag them into the light. He starts his car and drives to the station. The route takes him through familiar streets, past the park where he coached Little League baseball, past the community center where he gives talks about police-community relations, past the coffee shop where he stops every morning. The station looms ahead, a building where he's worked for over 2 decades, where he has friends and allies, but also enemies. People who think internal affairs is about persecution rather than accountability. People who believe the thin blue line means protecting officers, no matter what they did. David parks in his designated spot and walks through the building to the internal affairs office. It's after hours, but he knows Marcus will be there. He gave him a direct order, and despite everything, Marcus is still a cop who will follow orders from a superior officer. Sure enough, Marcus sits in the waiting area, still in uniform, looking like he might be sick. David walks past him without a word and into his office. He sets his briefcase down, turns on his computer, and pulls up Marcus's file. 12 years on the force. 47 complaints filed against him. 47. And yet he's still on active duty, still carrying a gun and a badge, still pulling over innocent people. David begins reading through the complaints one by one. Excessive force during a traffic stop, racial profiling, illegal search, false arrest, harassment. The pattern is clear and damning. And the responses to these complaints? Even worse. Nearly all of them dismissed or marked as unfounded by Marcus's sergeant. David picks up his phone and makes a call to the police commissioner. David, little late for a call, isn't it? The commissioner's voice is friendly but curious. We have a problem, David says. A big one, and it's going to make noise. He spends the next 20 minutes explaining the evening's events and what he found in Marcus's file. To the commissioner's credit, he listens without interruption, doesn't try to minimize the situation. How do you want to handle this? The commissioner asks when David finishes. Marcus is suspended effective immediately, pending a full investigation, David says. But he's not the only problem. His sergeant approved or dismissed 47 complaints. That's not oversight failure. That's complicity. Agreed. Who else? I need to pull the records of every officer in Marcus's unit. If this was happening systematically, others were involved or, at minimum, knew about it. You'll have resistance, the commissioner warns. The union will fight this. Let them, David replies. We have dashcam footage, civilian recordings, and a paper trail of ignored complaints. This isn't about persecution. This is about accountability. Do what needs to be done, the commissioner says. You have my full support. David hangs up and opens his office door. Marcus looks up with desperate, red-rimmed eyes. Come in, David says. Marcus follows him into the office and sits in the chair across from the desk. He looks smaller somehow, diminished. Did you file your report? David asks. Marcus nods and slides a folder across the desk. David opens it and begins reading. To his surprise, it's thorough and honest. Marcus has documented his own violations in detail. Why? David asks, looking up from the report. Why what? Why do it? Why pull over innocent people? Why abuse your authority? Marcus is quiet for a long time. When he finally speaks, his voice is hollow. At first, I told myself I was being thorough, proactive, looking for crime before it happened. But that wasn't it. The truth is, I liked the power. I liked that people were afraid of me. And it was easy to get away with because no one stopped me. My sergeant backed me up every time. After a while, I didn't even think about whether it was right or wrong. I just did it. It's perhaps the most honest thing Marcus has said all evening. You ruined lives, David says. People lost jobs because of arrests that never should have happened. People paid fines they didn't owe. People developed anxiety around police because of officers like you. You understand that? Marcus nods, staring at his hands. You're suspended without pay, effective immediately, David continues. Turn in your badge and weapon. The investigation will take several weeks. But I'm going to be honest with you. The outcome isn't in question. You'll be terminated. And depending on what else we find, you may face criminal charges. Marcus pulls his badge from his belt and his service weapon from its holster. He places them on the desk with the careful movements of someone in shock. For what it's worth, Marcus says quietly, I'm sorry. Not just because I got caught. I'm sorry for what I did. David doesn't respond. Sorry doesn't undo the damage. Sorry doesn't give back the dignity Marcus stole from dozens of people. Sorry is just a word. Marcus leaves the office, no longer a police officer. Just a man who would have to figure out what comes next. David sits back in his chair and pulls up the files for Marcus's entire unit. It's going to be a long night, maybe a long few months, but this is the job. This is why he swore an oath, not just to enforce the law, but to uphold it, even when that means going after other officers. Over the following weeks, David's investigation expands. He interviews the victims of Marcus's stops, including the young woman's brother who received the false ticket. He reviews dashcam footage that shows a clear pattern of racial profiling. He discovers that Marcus's sergeant has been actively burying complaints and has even coached Marcus on how to write reports that would avoid scrutiny. The sergeant is suspended. 2 other officers in the unit who participated in similar stops are suspended. The union fights back, threatening lawsuits, making noise in the media about a witch hunt. But David has something the union can't fight: evidence. Mountains of it. Video footage, witness statements, documented patterns of misconduct spanning years. The media picks up the story. Police captain illegally detained by racist officer runs as a headline in the local newspaper. But David redirects the focus. "This isn't about what happened to me," he tells reporters. "I was inconvenienced for an evening." The real story is the dozens of civilians who experienced this same treatment and had no recourse. The real story is a system that allowed this to continue for 12 years. Community groups rally. Citizens who had been afraid to file complaints before come forward with their own stories. The evidence keeps mounting. One of those citizens is a man named Carlos, a construction worker who had been pulled over by Marcus 3 times in 2 years. Each time, Marcus found an excuse: a broken taillight that wasn't broken, a lane change without signaling that Carlos swears he signaled, a suspicious air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. Carlos had been searched, detained, humiliated. Once he was arrested for obstruction when he asked why he was being pulled over. He spent a night in jail before the charges were dropped. Carlos shows up to David's office with his wife and his lawyer. He has documentation of every stop, every interaction, every violation of his rights. "I thought I was alone," Carlos says during the interview. "I thought no one would believe me because I'm just a regular guy. But when I saw what happened to you on the news, I realized this was bigger than me." David listens to Carlos's story and adds it to the growing file. Carlos isn't just a regular guy. He's a hardworking father of 3 who pays his taxes and volunteers at his church. He deserves better than what Marcus put him through. Marcus is terminated after a formal hearing. His sergeant is also terminated. The 2 other officers accept demotions and mandatory retraining as part of a settlement. The union eventually backs down when even they can't defend the evidence. But David knows this isn't really an ending. It's just one battle in a much longer war. For every officer like Marcus who gets caught, how many others are still out there? For every complaint that's taken seriously, how many are still being buried? The work continues. David implements new policies requiring body cameras to be active during all traffic stops. He creates an independent review board made up of community members to examine complaints. He starts a training program focused on recognizing and eliminating bias. Some officers hate him for it. They call him a traitor, say he's forgotten what it means to be a cop. But others, the good ones, the ones who join the force to actually serve and protect, they support him. They understand that accountability makes everyone safer, including police officers. As for that Wednesday evening in September, when Officer Marcus Bennett made the mistake of pulling over the wrong person, it became a turning point, not just for Marcus, whose career in law enforcement ended in disgrace, not just for the department, which was forced to confront its failures, but for the community, which learned that sometimes, the system could work if the right people were willing to fight for it. David never forgets how it felt to stand with his hands on his car, waiting while an officer abused his power. He uses that memory as fuel. Every time the work gets hard, every time he faces resistance, he thinks about all the people who experience the same thing without his resources or authority to fight back. That's who he's working for. Not the department, not other officers, but the people like Carlos, like the young woman's brother, like all the others who deserve to feel safe when they see red and blue lights instead of afraid. And that makes all the difference. If you made it to the end of this story, type justice in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. These stories matter, and the more people who hear them, the more change we can make together. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Not revenge, not punishment, but accountability, truth, and the belief that we can do better. We must do better. For everyone.